Good evening, everybody. We are back on the scene, and tonight we are here with Bobby Valentine. Bobby Orr might be in Boston, Bobby Knight might be in Indiana, but there's only one Bobby in Fairfield County, and that's Bobby V. Welcome here, Bobby. Great to have you here tonight.
Thanks, Joe. Great being with you. Come on, bro. Let's have a show.
There you go. Exactly. Your life in sports has been so extensive, from Rippewam Star to the Los Angeles Dodgers and being a two-time MVP in the minor leagues, and then your pro career and the managing, coaching, and everything. But right now, you are the athletic director at Sacred Heart, and exciting news just came up: the new athletic center, the Bobby Valentine Athletic Center. If you want to talk to us a couple minutes about that.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, you know, I've been at Sacred Heart now for 5 years. I can't believe it. It seems like it was just yesterday that I got there. And, you know, after we built the Jack Welch Business Center and bought a golf course and bought the GE property, there was only one thing left after we built the diner on campus, and that was to get a new fitness center and rec center on campus. And thanks to a lot of my friends who contributed, and a couple of my checks, and some of the vision that the people on campus had, we're going to have 60,000 square feet of rock climbing, bowling alleys, indoor running track, you know, gym space, dance space, yoga space, you name it. And I think it's going to be the final kind of crown on this wonderful little campus that's tucked away up there in Fairfield, Connecticut, that hardly anybody knew about, but now we're one of the fastest growing mid-majors in the country.
Yeah, when you think about it, it's only been, you know, in the 70s you talk about. When I went there in the late 70s, and it was thought of as a commuter school. And,
yes.
You know, and now it is a legitimate, the campus rivals Fairfield, rivals a bunch of the campuses around here. You say, you know, establishing the mid-major. You know, how do you, when you see what just happened with Chicago Loyola on this tournament, I mean, that's such a wonderful Cinderella ride. But as the athletic director, all your sports going forward, having a facility like this to really attract the athletes got to be a big step.
Yeah, but actually this facility will be to attract the entire student body. And then the Pitt Center, named after William Pitt, the great real estate developer here in the community, will become our Division I center.
Okay.
So right now we're sharing it. It's a mixed bag. It gets a little confusing and very crowded. We had as many as 1,500 freshmen enroll for next season. So that's going to give us 5,000, 6,000 undergraduates on campus. So we needed that place where other people could hang, and we needed a place that we could really segregate for our Division I, 32 Division I teams, you know. Right. So it's tough. Now we have a great strength and conditioning program, and we have a great medical staff. So we really need those 800 athletes to be taken care of in a kind of separate space. And now there'll be another space for the entire student body.
I mean, college sports, the rest of the country, seems to be so ingrained. When you talk about down south to the SEC, when you talk about the Midwest with the Big Ten and everything.
So that's a whole other story.
I know, it's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But I mean, to get the kids who come here and put out a legitimately good product, to get their notice, to get people to turn out in the stands and watch them play, and have people come in there, that's got to be like your mission statement there, and you know, show them what they're missing, because there is legitimately good basketball, baseball, football being played around the area that goes kind of unnoticed by the rest of the area around it. Are we spoiled because too many pro teams? Well,
there is a lot to be seen, and this is a great part of the country, you know, for athletics and sports. But, you know, we just try to provide the full service, you know, for kids to play and students to play Division I athletics. It's a demand on time and energy anywhere you're doing it. You know, in that SEC and some of the places, more people come and watch you, but the athlete is performing the same on the field and putting in the same work off the field, in the training room, in the video room, and in the classroom. You know, we had a cumulative GPA of 800 athletes, at 3.38 last year. Our wrestling team just came in with the number 2 GPA in all the country, only behind Harvard. So, we're kind of doing the mix. They're doing the athletic thing, but they're also doing the classroom thing because not everyone's going to be a professional. We had our first professional baseball player start for the California Angels just last Anaheim Angels, I guess it is.
Exactly.
Anaheim Angels was California when I was there.
Exactly.
Troy Scribner, and he got a win in his first outing, so that was very cool for our athletic program. And we have a couple guys in the minor league hockey situation, but it's really for the experience, not for the next step forward. It's for that one Division I experience. And we also have 800 kids playing club sports.
Right.
So it's a really sports-oriented campus, and the Bobby V Rec Center is going to kind of be what was needed to fill the voids.
A lot of our people who tune into us have kids that right now are in high school.
Yeah.
Looking to get noticed, hopefully. It's hard. It's
so hard.
You went through it, but that was a different world maybe back then than it is now. And I know in your life, you don't really do a lot of recruiting. That's done by the coaching staff and everything else. But if you were, training kids, what kind of advice would you give parents on how to maybe help their kids? Is there anything that they can do?
I wish I could give them advice. It has to be you have to have the video. You have to have the GPA. And then you kind of have to be lucky in that you get seen. You'll play travel ball and you'll be in tournaments, and you'll play FCAC ball and you'll be in tournaments. But it's real tough now for coaches to get out because they're in season. So during the high school season, it's got to be a word of mouth so that someone is told to watch someone play for the Stamford Legion or for the travel team out of Bobby V's or whatever it is. And then, like I say, in most sports, it's kind of lucky because when they're there to see you, you have to have a good game.
Right.
So it's a tough world. I wish it was easier. I'm hoping that eventually the metrics are going to be something that's going to help translate a good athlete to the coach in need of a good athlete and fill the voids around the country. But right now, it's a very tough row to hoe.
When you were, it's like you said, it was a long time ago. I mean, you were a football star.
When I was playing, I don't know how I got noticed in football, other than my coach telling college coaches. My coach Al Shannon had films when I was a sophomore, and he was sending off films to different coaches, and it created a buzz. And for baseball, I don't think I got seen playing much baseball in the area. I was lucky that a kid from Stanford, Billy O'Connor, was the assistant basketball coach at Providence College. He took home to dinner the assistant hockey coach and baseball coach, the guy who was the same guy, to have dinner, and then they stayed over to watch a game. When they watched me play a game, I had a good game, and then this coach invited me to play for him in Cape Cod. Okay, so I played there when I was a junior in high school. Not many high school kids did that. All the scouts are watching the college guys. They also saw the high school guy, and that's how I became a number 1 draft choice and also got more notoriety with colleges. But if it wasn't for Billy O'Connor taking home Lou Lamoriello, who's now in the Hall of Fame
Toronto
of hockey
Devils.
and runs the Toronto Maple Leafs, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been a number 1 draft choice in baseball.
Was he there when he was there when Roger Haggerty was at Providence too? I think.
I think he had left.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he had just left. Yeah.
You had to make a choice. I mean, most people don't have to make that kind of choice. Who guided you through that time? Do you remember?
Oh, my gut guided me. My dad was so wonderful in that he let my brother and I have our lives. He provided for us, but he let us make decisions. And when it came down to playing college ball, or even what college I was going to go to, and I was the first Valentine to go to college, or play professional baseball, or go to college and play more than one sport, that was all my decision. And I just laid in bed and felt it, and just like when I see kids come on campus and they're taking a tour or they're being recruited by one of their coaches, I tell them when they're at Sacred Heart, they've got to feel it. If they don't feel it, then go and find the feeling somewhere else. But when you feel it and make a decision that comes from your heart and your soul and your gut, you're usually happy with it.
Right. When you were growing up, was football your main sport, or was baseball your main sport?
Oh, no,
or both?
baseball is my main sport.
Baseball was always
yeah. I only played football in high school, and that was only because, that was a real turn of events where they closed my junior high school in Stamford, Clunan,
right,
for my 9th grade year. So all the 9th graders who were supposed to be at Clunan Junior High School went to high school. They went to either Stamford High or Ripwalm High. I got to go to Ripwalm High. Because I was a freshman, I learned the football plays as a freshman. I got to start opening day as a sophomore. In those days, sophomores couldn't start in football because they didn't know the plays. They were just getting to school and the season was starting, right? Well, I knew all the plays, I knew the coach, and becoming a 3-time All-Stater is because I got to play opening day in football because I was there as a freshman.
Now you people who
luck again. Good luck.
Yeah, but people skill too. But people who listen to us, the kids here may not realize some of the names when you report the camp, the Dodgers that were there, like the Steve Garveys, the Bill Buckners, Ron Say, or Davey Lopes.
The kids don't know who those guys are anyway.
Exactly.
But maybe some of the fathers.
But
would
now,
know
when
who
you
they
think
are.
about that, at the time I was a kid growing up.
Yeah.
And when they hear about Aaron Judge and the Yankees farm system, that was a farm system as good as what you're talking about with the Yankee farm system now. That's
Probably.
how good you were there.
Yeah. Well, the Dodgers were lucky at that time. They drafted a whole slew of guys at the same time. My draft, where I was the number 1 draft choice in 1968, I think had more players make the major leagues and play for 5 years or more than any other draft. So, and the Dodgers had the cream of that crop of those guys you're talking about. None of them made the Hall of Fame, interestingly enough. But Billy Buckner and Steve Garvey and Tom Paciorek and Davey Lopes and Joe Ferguson, guys that all had very, very good careers in the major leagues.
Well, when you think back on those times, a lot of changes happened in baseball. The invocation of free agency and things like that. Did you ever step back and say, God, I was part of a generation that really changed baseball?
Yeah, I stepped back in that because I was a player rep. So I was always the big mouth. It's not just now that I'm a big mouth. So when I was a young kid, I was the guy in the clubhouse who said things have to change. I was the guy at 22 who went to vote for the first ratification of the first collective bargaining agreement, and then I got traded a few times because I was a player rep. Usually the player rep in those days was the guy who wasn't at the meeting, and they voted him in to be the player rep. In my case, I wanted to be the player rep, and I saw the things changed. I was a guy from Stamford, Connecticut. Tony Attanasio was an agent of mine starting in 1969. There weren't agents in 1969, okay? And when I told my general manager I had an agent, he said, good, tell him to take you to dinner, but don't ever have him call me. So things did change, and I think they changed for the better, and maybe the pendulum's going to swing back a little, and some of the contracts are going to be a little less in the future, but I doubt it.
Yeah, we all hear about the guys that make it to major leagues, and there's pitfalls for these kids no matter how far they make it. Some make it as far as college. Some might get to play in the minor leagues. A guy who's been very close to you, I remember talking to him one day, Frank Rampant.
Yeah, that's who I was on the phone with. His son just hit a home run against Stanford High yesterday.
He was behind Gary Gaetti with Minnesota. So you have an all-star
with Kirby Puckett. Yeah,
you have an all-star third baseman in front of your third baseman. I remember him talking to me one day and saying, it came to a point where I just had to give it up. That has to be you must have run across a few of those people that just...
Oh, a million of them.
Yeah.
Sure. A million of them who either got injured or didn't have the right, weren't in the right place at the right time. Believe me, everyone thinks you make your own luck, but what you do is you become good at being lucky. And if you understand that luck is part of your life and you try to be good at it, I think then things happen your way.
You're one of the guys who left here made a name for himself nationally, but you always come back to Stamford, and you've opened up the Bobby Valentine Sports Academy in 2006, was it?
Yeah.
And now it's been there 12 years. Started out just baseball, then it got softball, then we got lacrosse, then we got soccer. Let's talk a little about the academy and what your vision was and how it's come around for you.
Yeah, well, the vision always was to have a place that I could share what I had learned. And I thought that learning things in Stamford from guys that were, institutions in Stamford, like Ron Perenni, my high school coach, and Sharkey Lorino, my Babe Ruth League and mentor during my young life, I wanted to pass down. But then I got to play for Tommy Lasorda, and I got to play for the Dodgers, and I got to play for 4 other Hall of Fame managers. I kind of got a lot of knowledge that I wanted to share. And so a guy, Mitch Hoffman, who later became the New Canaan High School baseball coach, and his dad approached me and said, hey, listen, we know you're in Japan, but we have a building. We want to put in some cages. We want to use your information and share it with the community. I said, I've been trying to do that for a long time, never was able to find the facility. And Frank Ramping came back from Japan he was my third base coach. He went into work with Mitch, found a bigger place now. We're over, away from the Camp Avenue location, and we have 30,000 square feet. We have an indoor infield and cages and the turf that everyone can practice on. And so now my goal is to try to teach coaches to coach, not necessarily teach players to play, because I think the biggest void or the biggest problem we have today is that there is a lot of demand from parents and from young players to have knowledge and to be treated properly when they're playing. And the coach's job isn't to tell them to turn left when they get a hit or turn right when they don't. It's to teach them all the life lessons that you'll learn when you're playing sports, because that's why you're playing sports. It's not to become a professional. It's not to go to the Hall of Fame necessarily. It's to understand teamwork and understand success, understand defeat, understand how you have to manage your time and manage your team and manage your associations with other people. And eventually, I hope before I get too old, I'll be able to have a national rollout of what a coach should be. And maybe even at Sacred Heart, I'll be able to convince them that it's a major that is needed to have people graduate with a diploma to say that they understand how the body works. They understand how the mind works. They understand how young people react to different situations, and teach them how to teach the young people what they're supposed to be getting out of the game of baseball, soccer, football, lacrosse, whatever it is they're playing. Because there's a lot more than wins and losses that you're supposed to be deriving when you play a sport.
Stamford has always had a love of sports.
Yes.
You produce guys, people remember Gary Cobb in football. Might have been right behind Lawrence Taylor as a linebacker in the NFL at that time. Great basketball team.
Andy Robustelli, the first great football player
Thank you.
ever
I was
out of
about
our
to.
town.
I covered his granddaughter Krista, who might have been the best softball player I ever saw.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you,
Rick Robustelli, his son, was a terrific player.
Exactly.
So, yeah, there have been a lot of great players.
Baseball drives that community like no other sport. I've never seen the dedication to Little Leagues, the guys, Bobby Robustelli, the Doug Horns, those guys that have coached the Kalo brothers for years. And they produce...
Judy DeLeo in Little League for 50 years.
Yeah, and they produce... There's a continuity to their teachings that kind of works through a lot of ways. The players seem to come up pretty well schooled in at least the fundamentals.
Well, yeah, I think that the fundamentals have been passed down. I think that there's a great base. As I mentioned, Sharkey Lorino, there was a whole founding fathers of baseball in that community and sports, John Scalzi, and the list goes on. And many of them have either parks or stadiums or something named after them. But that's all it is now, is the name and their fundamental style. I think, though, what has been lost is that in this demand for winning, that the great skills of life that I was taught aren't being taught as much. And I would like to see that done more.
You know, you managed for in the major leagues and in Japan. I don't know how much analytics go over in Japan. I'm more on this side of the year.
No, we started all those analytics.
Well, yeah, I was about to ask you.
Yeah.
You were always one who thought outside the box.
Sure.
And,
I had a sabermetrician in Texas with me when I managed. I had a guy crunching numbers in the mid-'80s that was giving me ideas of whether or not it's good to bunt, whether or not it's good to steal, whether or not, a guy who swings at the second pitch in the count is better than the guy who swings at the fourth pitch in the count. This isn't new stuff. It's just new being used universally, But yeah, I tried to do all that. I did it, brought it to Japan. I actually think that a lot of the scouts that came over when I was in Japan, when we finally had a real computerized system that charted every pitch, charted where every hit was hit to, whether it was hard or not, whether you're hitting against left-handers or right-handers, or whether or not the wind's blowing in or blowing out. Once they saw it in an actual computer program, and a lot of these young guys who are now general managers brought it back home and said, "Let's blow it out of the park." And now it's a way of life for a lot of baseball people.
You hear the older people, or I guess I'm getting to where I am.
Yeah,
with the older
you're
people.
older, Joe. Yeah,
I know. Should be able to. We'll always say the little sort of Sparky Anderson, Earl Weaver would never put up with that. But I mean, I think
Earl Weaver did.
I mean, more
Earl
information
Weaver
is good information.
Earl Weaver had 3x5 cards. He had everything written down. He was one of the first guys that I saw that ran strict platoons. He had left-handed lineups and right-handed lineups, and his left-handers didn't hit against left-handers very often. And he was one of the first. I hate the bunt. I hate the steal. The precious 27 outs that I have, and a 3-run homer is what to live by. Well, that's what we're talking about today,
exactly.
for all intents and purpose. And we're also talking about one of the greatest hitters who ever hit, who tried to hit people over the head to get them to understand that the swing always goes this way, that it never goes this way. And I was a disciple of his forever. That guy is Ted Williams.
Okay.
And he wrote the book on hitting, but because he was so obstinate and so arrogant that people didn't want to believe what he was saying, and what he was saying is not what they felt. And so today, they disregard Ted Williams and they talk about launch angle.
Oh, God.
And that's all that Ted Williams ever talked about was the launch angle, that you swing at the same plane that the ball's coming in, and you have a lot better chance of
I
making
remember
contact.
the big thing was back in the 70s was the Charlie Lau book of
And then Charlie Lau took video. It took Ted Williams' ideas and then took video. But remember, slow motion video in the 70s and 80s wasn't very slow.
Right.
So your eye was still capturing most of everything that was going on. And Charlie Lau had a pretty good idea, stopping things that, you get off the back front and you get firm on the front side. And he started talking about things in the swing that people really were not paying attention to very much but they are now.
Outside as an outsider looking in, it seems like the general managers have more of a say in the day-to-day lineup choices. And do they?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Well, it's not just the general manager. There's whole teams of people. When you hear about analytics, there are people who are studying what happened. And remember, all the statistics that they have are wonderful predictors of what happened. Mm-hmm. And what AI does, what that artificial intelligence does, is it predicts what might happen or what should happen because of the numbers. That's why you have cars without drivers, that they're just predicting what the humans have done over the years. They take everything that they've done, they say, well, they've done it that often, it must be this this way to make it happen.
Now, when you talk about coaching and rolling it out and teaching people how to adjust to coaching, analytics will be a part of it to teach these new generations?
Oh, yeah, I think you have to understand that if you're going to talk with a young guy, you better understand, what a good velocity off the bat is and what a good velocity that's thrown is and what spin rate is and what, playing the ball should be hit at. But I think coaching isn't so much that's instruction.
Okay.
And I think instruction and coaching are two different worlds, right? So you have the guy who changes the tire on the car, and then you have the guy who drives the car. They're
Right.
different people, and one is in one pile and the other's in another.
And then, of course, like I always talk about you, like we were talking before about you being part of the Stanford community. I still see you out at basketball games. I still see you at Little League games. I still see you taking,
as much as I can.
But also, when your playing career was winding down, you opened the first and probably the most successful sports pub in
Bar,
the area.
let's call it a sports
there you
bar.
go.
Yeah,
You've introduced.
we served food.
I saw the Hagler Leonard fight there. I saw
You really did, huh?
I saw the Giants win the Super Bowl against Buffalo there. Had plenty of time. I was in your. You had a football contest where you gave away a car. I didn't get there. I couldn't pick I didn't get close to wearing it.
You're dating yourself, Joe.
Yeah, it's okay. But I mean, you got to be proud of that. I mean, all the Little League kids that came in there to celebrate victories or defeats.
It was
first
a spectacular,
dates, everything. It was the hub of the city.
Yeah, and it was a bit of hub of the city, and it changed the city. And now we have a new one downtown, which is unbelievable.
Talk to me.
Well, it's
was
crazy,
it a hard choice to make to leave that?
It wasn't so hard, only because it got so old, and I was going to have to put so much money into to renovate it, and would have to close it to renovate it, that I didn't think that gappage was good. And when the new location came up, when I started the first one in 1980, I was advised by my banker not to put the one TV in that I had designed to be at the bar. He thought people would stay there too long if a good game was on and you wouldn't turn the chairs. He didn't want to loan me the money if I was going to have the TV. Today I have 206 TVs in this place, and two of them are 12 foot in diagonal. So we want the people to stay, and sports, TV, good food, good service, all that stuff seems to go hand in hand.
I mean, it could have been, those are the kind of places where sports talk radio, somebody had the idea for sports talk radio, listen to the guys debate the game.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, Chris Russo started in Stanford. In the back room in my restaurant, he did this type of thing. Public television was allowing you to have free time, and he got a 6-week run on Connecticut public television, and he did it out of the back of my restaurant.
Really? I never knew that.
Yeah, just the Mad Dog Show. Yeah.
Oh,
and then he was yelling so much that people said, we can't do this anymore. We can't concentrate and watch the game when he's yelling and doing his show. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing the life you've had and where you've gotten to. Was there anything that you wanted to do secretly that maybe, I mean, everybody says that every athlete wants to be an entertainer or the next Sinatra or the next, the next Elvis.
No, I never wanted to sing or dance. I did dance as a kid, but no, I never wanted to do anything but be as good as I could be at things I was doing, and I'm happy with what I've done. Regrets, you have a few, I guess everyone does, but those are usually things you didn't do, not things you did do. And what might have been that I didn't do? I didn't play football in college. I would have liked to have seen what that was like, but things at that time were such that if you were a professional in one sport, you were a professional in all sports. So you couldn't be a professional in baseball and play college football. But then the guy changed that. You remember who that was? In your time, a guy changed that who happened to be a professional baseball player but wanted to go back and finish his college basketball eligibility. Yeah, who was that, Joe?
Wait a minute, let me think.
Yeah, you know who it was because he's still in basketball. He was a good basketball player. He was a good baseball player. He was a better basketball player. Now he's still in basketball. He did this in the 80s, and he went to BYU.
Went to BYU, Danny Ainge?
Very good.
There you go.
Got it, bro.
Oh, there you go. Just had to give
he
me
was the first one to change the rules. that said if you're a professional, you were only a professional in that sport, and you still had your amateur eligibility in other sports.
I still remember beating Notre Dame in a tournament game, going the full length of the floor to beat them on a layup. It was amazing.
Coast to coast. Yeah, you did.
So, I mean, when you look at sports now and you look at everything and how it's become so ingrained in American society with the 24-hour coverage and everything else, are we at a tipping point where we're just saturated with it, or do we have that insatiable want to know more and more that'll never be peaked?
Well, the one thing about sport, and that the reason we have to keep it alive, is because it's apolitical, and our country, the world, and many other countries have become so separated by their politics that it's hard to be together, and they can come together when they're rooting for the same team. And I think that's the joy, and that's the wonderment of sports, is that they transcend boundaries, they transcend neighborhoods. They have people who might be fighting against each other election time, but rooting together during the World Series time. And we have to keep that alive.
All right. Well, Bobby, I can't thank you enough for your time tonight. It was fantastic talking to you. We want to thank you for being here on the scene with us tonight. Mitch, doing a great job with the cameras.
Mitch, you're the best. Great job. All 3 cameras. You're the man.
And Steve D'Onofrio puts the magic in the show behind the scenes. Thank you again for tuning in, people. Thank you, Bobby. And we will be with you in the next couple weeks. Back on the scene. This is Joe Ryan. Good night.